over to the conferencing center. Our agenda topic tonight in council chambers is community survey results, and I think Preeti is leading us on that. Preeti, please.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Preeti Sridhar, the Communications Director for the City of Renton. Today I have the pleasure to share with you the results of a recent survey that we conducted of our residents, businesses, and nonprofit organizations. Our goal was to get feedback from our community, to get a sense from them on their levels of satisfaction with the quality of services we provide, to hear from them on their priorities. We have conducted similar surveys in the past of our residents, one in 2008 and one in 2004. Some of the tools we used were slightly different, but there are areas that we had overlap, so we could track some of the changes and progress we've made. What we hope to do with the results of this survey is use these results to evaluate our performance, to help us make our priorities as we go forward, and especially now that we're budgeting based on performance-based budgeting. This is a very important tool to link results that we get from here to our indicators of performance. And most importantly, this is our way to connect with our community, to hear from them so that we can shape the future of our city together. We had the firm of PRR help us conduct the survey in late summer and fall of 2011. And it's my pleasure to introduce Bruce Brown. Bruce is with the firm PRR. He's their director of research, and he's got just an excellent many years of experience with surveys. I myself have had the privilege of working with him prior to coming to Renton for surveys we conducted with the city of Renton. We did send you copies of the full survey reports to you electronically, as well as the presentation that we'll make today. And it is my goal after the briefing today to also make this available to our community. We'll post the full reports on our website. We want to share it with all the departments so that the staff get a sense of the feedback that they've received, and provide other ways to get this information out. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bruce Brown, and hopefully we'll have a lot of time today to go through the methodology, all the results of the survey, and most importantly, time for questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you for inviting us here tonight to present the results of the surveys to you. We have, I think, some really interesting and very useful information to share with you tonight. As Preeti said, I'm the Director of Research at PRR, and we've had the privilege of working with the City of Renton on a number of different projects, this just being the most recent one. My goal tonight is to take you through some of the key findings, give you the sort of the big picture, because as Preeti mentioned, you already have the full reports that go into much greater detail. Preeti already discussed what the purpose of the surveys were, and so I won't spend any time on that. We've already touched upon it. But I do want to spend some time talking about how the surveys were conducted. First of all, these were conducted with telephone surveys. And for the residential survey, we used a random sample of 379 residents. I'll say a little bit about why the data was weighted in just a moment. We used 4 different sampling frames to randomly select households. We started off just using random digit dial sample, which gives you both listed and unlisted phone numbers. And we also used cell phone sample to make sure that we captured people that just have a cell phone or are what are called cell mostly households. Even though they still have a landline, they're taking most of their calls on their cell phone. Our thought was that with these 2 sampling frames, we would get a fairly representative sample across different age groups, different racial groups, income levels, etc. And what we found as we began to conduct the survey with just those 2 sampling frames were that the sample was trending towards whites, and it was also not capturing some of the younger age groups. So what we did was we then supplemented that sampling with what is called listed sample. In this case, it was targeted to non-whites, and also listed sample targeted to renters in an effort to get some of what we believe were some of the younger age groups. That turned out to be very successful. Nonetheless, we ended up weighting the data by both age and race at the end to statistically adjust it so that it represented the actual demographics for the city of Renton. So, make a long story short, the data that you have is very accurate in terms of reflecting the representativeness of your citizens' opinions and attitudes. The business survey was conducted with 100 randomly selected businesses, 79 for-profit and 21 nonprofit. Now, we oversampled your nonprofit and your government businesses because they are not 21% of your total business. But we wanted to have enough of them to say something about those nonprofit and government businesses so that if we carve those cases out, we could have enough data. When we combined both the for-profit and the nonprofit and government back together, we then statistically adjusted for that oversampling. So again, you have very good data here to represent your business community. In addition, this was supplemented with an online survey for each of the surveys. So you have another additional 190 residents who completed the survey online and 93 businesses who completed the survey online. That data is not combined with the telephone data, and the reason for that is that the online surveys are not statistically valid, but they're very useful. They give you additional input from your community, and in this case, the results when comparing the telephone survey results with the online survey results were remarkably similar. So you have some really solid information here. You don't have two disparate sources of information here. Oops, sorry. So what did we focus on for the residential survey? We asked a number of questions focusing on these issues. Is Renton headed in the right direction? How is Renton as a place to be? How well does Renton do in keeping residents informed? How well does Renton do in reaching out to its diverse populations? How safe is Renton? How connected are Renton residents to their community? What's it like working with city employees? What city services need the most attention? What is the value of services relative to taxes paid? What projects garner the most support for tax increases? And what types of tax increases are most supported? So, tackling that first question, is Renton headed in the right direction? And you're going to see this throughout this report. There's some very positive information coming back to you. Fully 55% here are either excellent or good, with only 5% indicating that the overall direction that the city is headed is poor. As a place to be, we asked a series of questions here, and these are in the order of the orange bar there, which is the excellent category. So if I had to sort of quickly summarize this, your neighborhood is the best place to be. That got the most excellent. Then going down, Renton as a place to live, Renton as a place to raise children, as a place to retire, and then at the bottom as a place to work. So it gives you a sense of where people rank the city relative to these kinds of criteria. Again, you know, and also I would also point out, if you take a look at the good bar there, the blue, big chunks of good in all of these categories. So again, a pretty positive message there. With the exception of the one on the bottom, a place to work, you've got, and don't be fooled by the don't know category there on the bottom. That's 28% of the people said they don't know if this is a good place to work. So you've really only got 5% that are saying it's a poor place to work. How well does Renton do in keeping residents informed? Again, very positive news here. You've got 9% saying excellent and 35% saying that it's good. 14% though are saying poor. So again, you know, a positive message, but also areas for consideration in improvement. How well does Renton do in reaching out to its diverse populations? Again, a pretty good message here, but not as positive as reaching out to, or communicating with your residents. So if you narrow this down a little bit to the issue of diverse populations and reaching out, you have a smaller percent in that excellent and good category. This was very interesting, I think, and we're going to show you some data from the previous surveys a little bit later, how Renton has actually, in the eyes of its residents, improved in these areas. But the big message here is, if you take a look at the chart on the left, where we're looking at neighborhoods, you've got almost 2/3 saying that they consider, during the day, they consider their neighborhood to be very safe. And another 32% say it's somewhat safe. So, not a big issue of concern there. But if you take a look at that same neighborhood at night, those percentages go down. That's the blue bar. So now you only have, I think that's 38%, if I can read that accurately. 38% are saying it's very safe, and another 41% are saying it's somewhat safe. But you have very small percentages after that in terms of it being unsafe. The downtown area is another issue. During the day, 37% say it's very safe, another 40% are saying it's somewhat safe, but when it comes to the evening, that's where you see the concern among your residents. Only 9% are saying it's very safe at night, 27% saying it's somewhat safe, and if you go further down, you've got 27% saying it's somewhat unsafe, another 15% saying it's very unsafe, so that's an area of concern showing up in the survey among your residents. We took a look at this issue of how connected people are to Renton, or the issue of social capital, asked them a series of questions, asked them how frequently they had done these things, and if we focus on, I think, the red bar to the right, which is the more than 26 times, you can see the kinds of things that people do more frequently. Providing help to a friend or neighbor, reading the Renton newsletter, volunteering their time to some group or activity, having contact with an employee of the City of Renton, and then further down you begin to see larger chunks of the orange category, which is the never category. So you can see where people are engaged and where they are less engaged in the city. What's it like working with city employees? Again, very positive messaging here. You've got in the excellent category almost half under courtesy, knowledge. I think here the best thing to do is to kind of combine the excellent and good together. And if you do that, you've just got really positive, very positive numbers here. Very small percents are saying that these issues are poor in their estimation. How good are city services? And we asked overall, how would you rate the services? Again, you've got over 50% rating it as either excellent or good. Very small percent rating it as poor, only 5%. What city services need the most attention? The way we got at this was to ask, in regard to a series of questions, about 25, I believe it was, on city services. We asked people, rate the quality of that service on a scale of 1 to, I think it was 1 to 7. Or I think, no, it's 1 to 5, I'm sorry, 1 to 5. And then also, how important is that service to you? Rate that in terms of importance. You can see the quality scores, the mean quality scores in orange, the mean importance scores in blue, and then to the left, you see the gap. The bigger the gap, the less the expectation is being met among your residents. So if you were to use this, and this is just part of the list of the 25, we couldn't fit it all on one slide, and we wanted to give you the ones that where the biggest gaps were. This tells you where you can focus your attention to best meet the needs of your residents based on their responses here. So recruiting and retaining businesses was where there was a big gap. It's an important issue, and the quality was not as high as people would like it to be. Ease of traveling in and through the city was another one that was important. Municipal court services, again, in this case, was also a higher gap score. Street repair and maintenance, police response to traffic problems, taste and cleanliness of drinking water, police response times, etc. So the full list is provided in your report, and you can get a sense of where you can focus your attention to best meet the needs of residents based on their responses to this survey. What is the value of services relative to taxes? I think this is a really positive message here. You've only got 10% of the people saying poor. There is a fairly large percent that just don't quite know. But again, you have fairly large percentages of people who are saying that they're getting their money's worth. We asked people, how much would you support or oppose additional taxes for the following projects? These are in the order of support with the orange bar, and so you can see where they would be most likely to support additional taxes. maintaining existing parks, expanding bus or transit service, building new sidewalks or bike lanes, etc. We then asked people, if we were to raise taxes, where should those taxes, what types of taxes?
Bless you.
And the message here is, don't raise your utility taxes. That's the place where you're going to get the biggest sort of reaction. It's interesting, I think, that these were residential respondents who said that the business license fee should be the one that's increased the most. That's where they would be most supportive of a tax increase. But then also, I think the property tax increase is a fairly positive number. It's, especially in an economy like this, it seems very positive that your residents are saying, yes, if we're going to raise taxes, this is the place to do it. And as we noted on the previous slide, these are the kinds of things we want you to spend that money on.
Can I ask you, do these include the responses from the businesses, or are those separated out for this?
Those are completely separate.
Okay.
And we asked very different kinds of questions on the business survey, so we're going to get to that.
Mr. Taylor?
On the property tax increases, are these homeowners or are these just, random residents?
These are both homeowners and renters. And so we will, in the report, we would have cross-tabulated this question by whether they were a homeowner or a renter. And I can look, after the meeting tonight, I can look to see what that answer is.
I'd be curious to know what percentage are homeowners, because they've got more of a vested interest in property taxes than a renter.
I can tell you what percentage of the sample is homeowners very quickly. %61% were homeowners, 39% were renters.
Okay. Sounds about right.
So to kind of summarize this residential survey, and what it's sort of saying is, people sound pretty positive. They are concerned about safety, particularly in the downtown area, particularly at night. There's some concern about Renton as a place to work. It didn't score as positively. There's some emphasis on keeping citizens better informed, particularly outreach to diverse populations. The areas where the biggest gaps are between their expectation and the quality that they see in the service is in terms of recruiting and retaining businesses, ease of travel in the city, and street repair and maintenance. And future projects that they would support with a tax increase would be maintaining parks, expanding transit, new sidewalks and bike lanes, and again, as I mentioned, the least support for raising taxes through a utility tax increase. Any questions before I move on to the business survey?
Questions from council?
I have one. It's kind of subtle, but I was wondering, I noticed that on the Good Place to Work, that there were like 5% that said Renton wasn't a good place to work or something, but any ideas whether that might have been misconstrued as, is it a good place to find a job versus if you have a job, it's a good place to work?
I think that's a good question. When you ask a question on a survey, there's always some interpretation on the part of the respondent. Right. So if we had said, is it a good place to find a job, that's a different question than is it a good place to work? And I would have to say that that's a little fuzzy, I think, maybe the way we asked the question.
I was wondering, maybe 10% of the citizens tried to find a job in Renton and couldn't, and interpreted it as not
I don't think we know the answer to that. I will say this, that the reason we asked the question that way is because that's the way it was asked on previous surveys, and so we wanted some comparability.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're right, there's always some interpretation.
I'm sure there is for all the questions.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes. Bruce, I've got a couple of questions. One is, do we understand what compels a resident or homeowner to respond, or a business owner to don't know?
When they answer don't know?
Yeah.
Well, it's, we want it to be a legitimate answer because, and I will also say this, that typically when we ask people these questions, we are providing them with the response categories. So let me give you a good example. Let's find something here. Here's an example. Yeah. So how would you rate the value of services for the taxes you pay to Renton? Would you say excellent, good, fair, or poor? We do not say to them, don't know. We wait for them to tell us that they don't know. And the reason we do that is because if you provide people with a don't know answer, it's too easy for them to slip, I don't want to think about it, yeah, it's don't know. You know, telephone surveys are pretty tough to do because people's time is precious. So you want to ask these questions in a way where you get them to think, but if they truly do not know the answer to that, you want them to have that opportunity as a legitimate response category.
Okay, so my follow-up to that would be, as I look at the response options, excellent, good, we could weight those together, and for the sake of this particular screen here, we could see that 44% of the respondents viewed the value of services based on the taxes that they're paying positively.
Mm-hmm.
But inversely, I would say that poor and fair would be partners also, and that fair would be not good. So that would also indicate that 33% did not have favorable responses. And then we've got that category of don't know, I would say is probably in the middle. Is that right?
Well, I don't think I would put don't know in the middle, because don't know is don't know. I just don't know.
Well, don't know is neutral. I mean,
It
they don't
really
have an
is.
opinion one way or the other, in other words, what I'm trying to get at. Or at least one that was conveyed.
I don't think I would look at it that way, because there are times when we do give people a neutral category in the middle of a scale, and even when that's the case, we still provide them with a don't know category. They don't even know if it's neutral. They just really don't know if it's positive or negative. They just really can't place themselves anywhere. So they just don't have a sense of how to, they really can't answer the question in a legitimate way for you. So they say they just don't know.
And the reason why I'm curious about that don't know category is because if this tool is going to be used for performance-based budgeting, and we're going to be making decisions on how we're going to, allocate and spend money, I would want to know. Some of these don't knows are 20% plus of our population, which is a significant number. I'd want to know what their thoughts are.
The people who don't know what their thoughts are?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you could ask them, but I think what you're going to get is they just really don't have enough. They don't have a sense or a basis upon which to answer the question. They just don't know if their taxes, the value of their services that they get is worth the taxes that they're paying. The one thing that I would suggest here is, and the reason we put the don't know in there is because we did not want to overinflate these other categories. Sometimes data is reported with the don't know pulled out. And then you can walk away saying, wow, look at the percent of people who think that the value of service or taxes paid is excellent. All of those other categories are going to expand when you do that. So that's why the don't know category is presented, so that you have a clearer picture, particularly for budget purposes.
Don, then Randy.
Maybe a better way to look at the don't know category is because I know when I get these surveys, if I haven't had to avail myself of the services that one expects from the city, and then or whatever it is, I'll say I don't know because I haven't used it. They don't, and I don't think a lot of people think of that when they turn the water on, that's a city service. I mean, I look at it, I turn my water on and it's there.
Right.
I'm not looking specifically that it's a city service, and like, is my street clean? Is my to the police respond when I dial 911? Is more what I would personally look at if I were to get a survey like this as a service.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the one thing I would point out is that prior to them answering this question, they answered these questions, like 25 different city services. So the respondent at that point has it in their head that, okay, these are the city services I just told you about in terms of what I think their quality is, how important they are to me. So I think in this case, I think they came to the next question with a sense of what we meant by city services. But you're right. I mean, there are some people who answer don't know because even though they may have they may not have used a lot of city services, and so they can't, well.
Randy?
Bruce, council members, if I may suggest a response to this, this one is particularly looking at value of services relative to taxes. And we do know that when we worked with the Community Budget Advisory Group last year prior to the budget, we really, and these were people who have been informed, who are really participant in various aspects of government. We still needed to work a lot with them to walk through what our, what the relationship is between city taxes, city services, how all of, basically our budget process. So this is in a sense a complex question for everyone. So, a suggestion here is that potentially they did say don't know because they realize that, when you're talking value and taxes and services, there are many dimensions to the response. So.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my comment sort of dovetails with that, and that's that. And there may be opportunity, and that the interesting question that Mr. Taylor brought up, because it is a complex question, and I sit here and I have to think about all the different ways we collect tax money and trying to add it up for a typical person. I mean, it's very likely that many people do not know exactly how much of all that tax money the city of Renton gets, and hence it's hard to decide whether there's good value. But I think the opportunity in the question is, if we have 23% that don't have enough data to know if they're getting good value, I mean, that does suggest that we could communicate. Most people that offer products, are constantly showing their customers what a good value their product is and how much they're paying for it versus what they're getting back. And it suggests that if a whole quarter of the city, sample doesn't really know, I mean, that might be something in the future that we could target specific informational pieces out, in Renton Reporter or something, showing people how much they're really paying to the city and how much they're getting in return for that.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Taylor?
And was somewhat along the lines of what I was thinking about also. I haven't seen the stats yet in terms of the demographics, but you did mention earlier in your presentation that it's a pretty good cross-section of how diverse our community is.
It is.
And which raises the question that there could be opportunity and that there are residents, and I like to use the word resident rather than voter or citizen, because everybody's not a citizen and everybody's not a voter, but our residents, they all pour money into our coffers, some to, in a greater or lesser extent, depending on whether or not they're a homeowner. And that may explain the low number of individuals who would likely want to see an increase in the utility rates, because whether you're a homeowner or a renter, you're paying utility fees. So I guess the opportunity for knowing how well we're connecting with everyone in our community, whether they're understand all of the services that we provide, or if they're just using some of the bare basic services like garbage and utilities, it would be helpful for us to want to know that they understand how all of that works. And I would agree that that's an opportunity for more outreach.
Well, and one of the ways that you might consider doing that is by bringing a group of citizens together to probe more deeply on any number of these questions in some type of a focus group setting, for example. And we did ask people, I'm pretty sure we asked people at the end of the survey, would you be interested in additional research? Could we recontact you maybe for, other surveys or a focus group? And a lot of people said yes, so the opportunity is there.
I was just going to say, I should have said we could put something in the Renton Reporter or the Renton Patch, since Patch is always here with us. So.
Mr. Brown, point of clarification, if I could, on we're saying taxes, but I doubt that we were as nuanced as to our utility tax, that was utility rates, because those just went up significantly.
Oh, right.
And it's not necessary. It's not a tax that went up. It was a rate that went up. And
yes.
Can you give me a little basis of what that question was, how that question was asked? I mean, it's inclusive of rates would be a more accurate statement, or am I wrong?
Let me look. Let me get to the exact question.
Yeah, that's.
the way the question was worded, how likely would you be to support the above projects if the taxes or fees come from, and then we read these to them, and we rotated the order in which these were presented to them to get rid of any bias. So property taxes, utility taxes is how it was phrased. Business license fees, vehicle license fees, also known as car tabs. So that's the way the question was worded. Other questions about the residential survey?
Go ahead.
Okay, let's talk about the business survey. So in this case, remember, I mentioned earlier, we surveyed 100 different businesses. We asked a series of questions that had to do with things like how have business prospects changed in the last year? What employee-related changes have occurred in the last year? What do business prospects look like for the next year? What would improve business prospects in the next year? What are the major challenges to organizational growth? How can Renton best support businesses? How satisfied with Renton are you as a business location? What are the benefits of Renton as a business location? Are business taxes too high, about right, or too low? And what has been the experience of working with city employees? A lot of positive information came out of this also. 45% are saying that over the last 12 months, their business prospects have improved. There's also the 22% who said things got worse. Employee-related changes that occurred in the last year, the two big ones were that they reduced hours for existing employees or downsized their workforce. But there are other fairly big chunks of other types of things happening, as you can see, as a result of the economy in the last 12 months. Prospects, business prospects for the next year, again, a very positive message here. 43% think things are going to get even better. Only 3% think things are going to get worse. But again, as we've pointed out before, there's big chunks of people that just aren't certain. These are the don't knows. They're not sure. That's a big chunk of people that just really don't know which way it's going to go. And then you have a large percentage of people who think that things are going to stay about the same. What are the two most important factors that will influence this change in your organization's business prospects over the next year? This was an open-ended question, so we categorized the responses afterwards, and I think you can see, and this is going to happen on several of these slides, the whole issue of the economy improving and getting more customers. I mean, you're going to hear that a lot. That's not surprising. But also the issue of doing more advertising and marketing are seen as things that will influence their organization improving over the next year. Three major challenges to organization growing. Again, not surprising, too few customers. Availability of financing came up as the second most big challenge. Government regulations at both state, local, and county levels. The economy. So again, we're hearing some consistent or repeating themes here. What would improve business prospects in the next year? Oh, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. How can Renton best support businesses? The top one here, problem solving, this is again an open-ended question, problem solving and relationship building assistance. The verbatim comments here got at the idea of the city being a partner with the businesses to help them to resolve some of their business challenges. This was followed by lower taxes, attracting more businesses to the area, predictable regulations, which you also saw in the previous slide.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Taylor.
Bruce, this is pretty interesting. That's a pretty large population, percentage of business owners that don't know.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
Yep. Yeah, and as you said earlier, that's an important finding. I mean, the fact that people don't know what is the one best way for the city to support their business and nonprofit community.
I would think a business owner would know or have an idea.
And I will say this, that when you survey people on the phone, as you get further into the survey, people begin to fatigue. They, when are we done? This is a fairly short survey. This only took about 10 or 11 minutes on average. And people were very engaged in the survey. The other thing I would point out is that these findings are very similar, and I mentioned this earlier, to what we found in the online survey. So let me just kind of point something out here. On the online survey, 28% of the respondents said problem-solving or relationship-building assistance, 12% said lower taxes, and 9% said predictable regulation. So again, very similar kinds of things. I can, afterwards, I can tell you what the percent was that don't know on the online survey to see if it was the same. But yeah.
When I look at better government incentives at 3%, predictable and stable tax environment, fewer regulations, immediately as a business owner, former business owner, I would think that those probably might be at the top for many business owners.
Not in this sample. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mr. Corman. Yeah, I was also intrigued with the fact that there's only 1% said create a safer environment, security and police patrol. I tend to agree with that. You know, I don't really think it's a problem. However, I can think of a number of times business owners have said we need to do more in that area. So,
you know, take a look at the way the question is asked too. What is the one best way for the city?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So we were getting them to tell us what's the one most important thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it doesn't. So you've only got 1% that said that the whole issue of the safer environment. But you know, if this had been a question that said what are the top three, for example,
right, that might have made
the
top
might have gotten
three.
more people into
I
that.
see.
Yeah.
That's good clarification.
How satisfied with Renton as a business location? Lots of satisfaction here. Two most important benefits of having your organization located here. This was an open-ended question. People mentioned the physical location in the region, just sort of where it is relative to the rest of the region, the people, transportation infrastructure, which I think is sort of interesting because this is the business community that's talking to you now, but the residential community kept saying we want better transportation. That was some of the areas where they wanted to see improvements. You got 19% saying the local economy is a benefit. Business-friendly climate, 14%. So these are the benefits that they see of being here. And when we ask them, I'm going to just skip ahead here real quick. Well, maybe not. We'll get to it. I was going to talk about the issue of how many people think they're going to be moving their business. It's very low, so there's lots of reasons that they like this area. This is a question about the business taxes being, and this is exactly how it was asked, too high, about right, or too low. And you've got almost 2/3 of the people saying just about right. 3% say it's too low. Wouldn't you like to know who those people are, I guess? And then, not surprisingly, you're going to have some percent that are always going to say things are too high. But you also have, again, this don't know category of people. I'm not really sure, I don't know. So, which kind of mimics what we saw in the residential survey, the percent that said I just don't know about the value of what I'm getting relative to the taxes that I pay. This is outstanding information here. Experience working with city employees. You can see the categories on the left, and you've just got 100% people of saying members are courteous, conducting themselves in a professional manner, and so on down the line. The two at the bottom, I guess, are the areas where the most improvement could be seen, and that's requested information was accurate and the information was provided in a timely manner. Gives you some idea of where some improvement could be done. And I guess for some reason I didn't see that. Maybe we didn't ask people if they were going to move their business. I thought we did. And sorry if I don't have it here. But just to summarize the business survey, people like the location, staff are helpful.
I do have that, 96%.
Thank you. 96% said they were not planning to relocate. Thanks. Again, this issue of looking for more assistance from the city, and again, a pretty positive outlook looking, going forward in terms of their business prospects. So any questions about the business survey or?
Council, we have 5 more minutes on this topic. Most importantly, we have 5 more minutes, or as much time as we need, of Mr. Brown's time. The contract on the survey was coming up, which is why we wanted to get this and get Mr. Brown in front of us. We could obviously set this topic over for further discussion after we've had a chance to review stuff, but let's go ahead and, if you've got something for Mr. Brown, now's the time to grill him.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Taylor.
I would be delighted to have this come back to us again, just to learn a little bit more about it. I think these types of surveys are critical, and for us as a city, to understand how we're delivering services to our residents, and also using this feedback as an opportunity to learn how we can improve on it, how we can expand, how we can do better, and how we can improve our total outreach. So I understand the time restraints. I'd be interested in spending a little bit more time on it in the future after having a chance to review it more thoroughly.
Mr. Covington, do you have what we're going to do with this? Is this working into other projects, or?
Well, I think we can certainly look at how we can schedule more time with this. What we probably need to do is, I guess, maybe clarifying question from the council. Do you need our consultant to come and provide more information? Our contract with them is pretty well wraps up with this meeting, unless the council feels like you need more time with them. Staff is certainly available to spend more time working through these survey results with you, and we could do that as part of our retreat coming up, or whatever you'd like to do.
Chair?
Mr. Taylor.
Staff would be sufficient for me. I'm sure if they had questions, they could always make a phone call and
I'm
refer
seeing
back
nods.
to...
I agree.
Nods across the board on that. Staff
Okay.
would be sufficient. Other questions for Mr. Brown? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time and efforts. It was very informative.
Thanks.
Preeti, you want to close us up?
Yes, thank you very much. And if in the next couple of weeks you have more questions as you look through the report, please, send those over to me so I can, kind of further dive into the surveys and see if I can, bring answers and a discussion at the next time you want it. So,
Great.
thank you again. And thank you, Mr.
Preeti.
Brown.
We'll go ahead and recess Committee of the Whole for 5 minutes and reconvene in the council conference room.
Delivers the materials to the school.
It's such a simple, wonderful idea. It connects individual donors with individual classrooms and individual teachers and individual projects. You know exactly who you're helping and how you're helping them.
It's tough.